Good morning, grinders. Welcome to RotoGrinders Today. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. BlenderHD, BlenderHD, if you want to follow me on Twitter. And it's Friday, March 29th. We take a look at the MMA slate, UFC, Fight Night, something, Vegas. It's UFC Atlantic City. They're actually in front of fans, pretty much. Okay, so it's UFC Atlantic City for tomorrow. It's a 7 p.m. Eastern start time. 14 fights on the card as of now. We still need to wait for some weigh-ins, so always keep your eyes peeled for that. Hit the thumbs up button on your way in the door. Hit the notification bell to always know when we go live. Subscribe. Do whatever you do. Hit whatever you want. I'm here alone, so it'll be a pretty quick show. It's also my birthday today, right? March 29th. So I got to go do my birthday celebration, which is doing nothing else other than what I would normally do. So I got my MLB props in. I got MLB DFS to work on today. I got tons of stuff, but we'll be talking about the UFC card you see up in Lineup HQ. We got all whatever you need for UFC tomorrow. We got it here. We got projections. We got ownership. We got the Ground and Pound podcast, which will be coming out later today with Liam and Mike H3 Buddha. They'll break down every single fight on the card. We got Score Patrol's takedowns. We got Liam's fight breakdowns. We got our simulations, which is what I use, the simulation outputs, in order to determine, who's over-owned, who's under-owned. You can get all of that by clicking on that link in the description. We have a new deal coming out that's available now, $250 off. A combo premium subscription. So you get MLB, you get NBA, you get college basketball, you get the PGA, you get MMA, you get everything. So soccer, we still got the Premier League soccer, Champions League soccer, still got that. So if you want a 6-month subscription, $250 just right off. Just click on that link in the description. If you want to try us out for 3 days, we got a trial pass, $19.99. So feel free to check that out as well. We got baseball projections up today already. We got Jesus' $1 Million Musings. He always writes like 10,000 words a day about every single slate. So join us here at RotoGrinders. And if you don't, at least hit that thumbs up button for the free content here. I'm by myself today. Mike's not with me. I'll be on tomorrow with Mike. We're doing crunch time tomorrow for the UFC slate at 4:30 Eastern. Right? There'll be a crunch time for MLB about 3:15, 3:20. And then 4:30, it'll be me and Mike basically breaking down, last-minute things when it comes to the slate. Hopefully, all 14 fights are a go tomorrow. And whenever we talk about UFC slates, for DFS purposes, we want to look at the contextual variables of the slate. How does that change your approach to lineup building? And especially the difference between small field contests and large field contests. So we see here, we got 14 fights, large card. This is a large card. So the two contextual variables, the main ones that we look at, the size of the card, how many fights, and then how close are the fights, okay? So that's the two main contextual variables. The larger the card, obviously there's more opportunities, which means there's more opportunities for fighters to get 100-plus points, right? Which is kind of what we're aiming for. We can get 6 fighters with 100-plus points in our lineup. We're doing pretty well to take down a GPP. So the larger the card, the more that we want to prioritize people that can actually score 100-plus points. So win equity, especially for underdogs, goes down on these larger cards. So if we take a look here, I'll even bring up my my Google Street, which is not like completely done yet. Right? I just have like estimate our ownership, some estimated ownership. Not all that great. So I always put down the win odds, the inside the distance odds, the round one odds, the ownership, the median projection, stuff like that to weigh in. We take a look at the size of the card. So like these underdogs that could win and not score very well aren't as much of a priority on this slate. Let's say it was an 11-10, 11 fight card. An underdog that scores like 76 points is much more likely to make the optimal lineup than on a card where there's 14 fights rather than 11 fights. So guys like Kyle Nelson with plus 650 inside the distance. Guys like Angel Pacheco at plus 500 inside the distance. Dudakova at 7,700 plus 500 inside the distance. Like the underdogs that have less of a path to finish and score 100 plus points become less of a priority to me. Obviously, there's still a chance, they could get a first round knockout. They could score well in the decision, some of them, right? It'll just happen less frequently, but they may be a little bit overowned. And then on the top of the card is the more finishing equity that is available at the top of the card, the more and more likely that 9K fighters end up making the optimal lineup. And we see here the top, we actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fighters, 6 out of 14 fights, where the favorite fighter is more than a coin flip to win inside the distance. So we got Arce, we got Lawford, we got Silva, we got Ruzaboev, we got Chidi Njokuani. I can't barely pronounce his name. At minus 110 at 8,600. Ibo Aslan, minus 115 at 8,300. Now, their win odds aren't amazing, right? Chidi's only a minus 140 favorite. Ibo's only a minus 125 favorite. But when they win, it's most likely inside the distance. And at their prices, they put up 100 plus points in the mid 8K range. It's going to be a problem if you don't have them. So finishes that it looks like there's going to be a decent amount of fights that are going to finish, which makes it even more of a priority on finishing equity rather than win equity. The other contextual variable is how close are the fights. We saw last week, we didn't get one of the card that we had last week. We don't get many of those where even the most expensive fighters are barely a 2-1 favorite, right? On this card, the spreads are a little bit wider. So we see here, Arce is the biggest favorite at minus 400. Lawford, minus 360. And then we have a whole bunch of fighters that are around 70% win probability, right? We got Silva, Ruzaboev, Algeo, Malkoun, Lupe Godinez, even, right? So when the spreads get wider, that means it's more and more likely that a lineup that uses most of the salary ends up being optimal. So last week I said, hey, there are lineups that you could leave 2,000 on the table and it still maintains enough win equity that, especially, they're less likely to be duped, that it's much more viable to play lineups that are 48.5, 49K, right? This is more of a slate where the optimal lineup is more likely 49.5 plus, right? More likely, right? Could be 49.2 or whatever, but those 48K lineups, probably less so. So those are the two main contextual variables that you should look at when constructing GPP lineups for MMA. Small field, large field. Okay. Obviously, in the largest field contests, most of the time, the optimal lineup, or very close, the second nut, the third nut lineup, is going to win the contest. Okay. So you're aiming for optimal rates. We have simulation outputs that we publish for premium members. They'll be available later today. Obviously, click on that link in the description. Join us. You're aiming for that in large field. So you're aiming for finish. It's not a matter of, well, what happens? This Ibo Aslan Anton Turkali fight most likely doesn't make it to the third round, right? Most likely. Ibo Aslan probably either knocks out Turkali in the first round or gasses in the second round, or Turkali finishes the net, right? Something like that. We have the Chidi and Njokuani and the Reese McKee fight. Most likely, that ain't seen the third round. So these are the fights where very binary outcomes. The winning fighter is much more likely to score very well, and the losing fighter is not going to get many points, right? So a lot of people get afraid of these fights and be like, well, what happens if I take him and he loses? It's like, well, the large field contests, you should be more inclined to play these types of fights, right? Even if you're playing multiple lineups, you're playing 20 lineups, and you're like, I'm going to play 10 and 1 and the opponent in the other 10, because the likelihood of someone, either of the two, scoring well enough to be optimal is very high. Can't say that about fights like Lupe Godinez versus Verna Jandarova, right? Where Lupi's plus 475 inside the distance. Jandiroba's plus 350. This fight's much more likely to go the distance. And unless Lupi Godinez has like a million takedowns, most likely that fight's not going to score well. Her win probability for her price at 8,700 is actually very good. Now, for small field contests, I'm not saying that you should be playing these types of fighters, but these types of fighters become much more worthwhile to play. So like Lupi Godinez in my large field lineups, probably not going to have much of. I'm going to assume that when our sim output comes out, that her optimal chances are going to be quite low. Now, I mean, she's going to be low owned. Okay. So, I mean, it may be commensurate with her ownership, but she's going to have to really score very well or get a finish, even though she's not likely to get a finish, to be optimal. But if you're playing contests that are 1,000 entries or less, 500 entries or less, 300 entries or less, if you're playing the 121, the 555, even the $44 contest, I think there's 500 entries. You don't need the optimal lineup. The large field contest, you're playing 20,000, 30,000 other entries. The likelihood of someone having the optimal or close to the optimal is way more likely than in the smaller field contests. So if you're playing smaller field contests, you don't necessarily have to prioritize finishing 100+ point scoring equity in like every spot in your lineup. So for instance, in the upper range, like we have Arce, Loughran, Silva, and Ruzabov. They're all 50+% chances to win inside the distance. It's going to be very hard. I've tried some lineup constructions. It's going to be very hard to play two of these guys without taking a shot at an underdog that is suspect. Okay? A lot more of the ownership is going to be condensed, especially with Chidi and Jaquani and Ibo Aslan, 8,600, 8,300, because their inside the distance lines are similar enough to fighters that are 1,000 more expensive. The thing is that they're not as big of a favorite to win the fight. So to me, these are the key fights on the slate. The Chidi Reese McKee fight, the Aslan Turkali fight. You get those fights right, most likely you're going to have a very good day. You get them wrong, probably going to have a bad day, right? Reese McKee is still in play, right? He's making his way back into the UFC. Chidi and Jaquani's been like, he's lost 3 of his past 4 fights, right? He's been knocked out. Now, I would consider this a step down in competition. Also, Chidi's moving down a weight class, which does typically has an effect on your chin when you're moving down. So this fight may not make it past the first round. And then we have Ibo Aslan versus Turkali, and Ibo Aslan, Turkali doesn't have any defense, and Aslan has knockout power. But Aslan, after 5 minutes, probably dead, right? Probably gassed. I mean, probably has 5 minutes to win in this fight. These are the two fights that are much more likely, with their pricing the way it is, that if the winner scores 100 points, they're going to be optimal. I would be prioritizing these fights. I would prioritize those two fights over the main event. We have Blanchfield versus Fioreau, 8,800, 7,400. Blanchfield's plus 150 inside the distance, which isn't that bad for 8,800. And Fioreau is 375. If you don't know the styles of these fighters, Fioreau pretty much just a striker, right? A good one, a very good striker. And Blanchfield is probably one of the best. I mean, she's young, but one of the best wrestlers in the weight class. Probably if she wins this fight, she's going to get a title shot. So Blanchfield obviously has that grappling upside, but she also sometimes gets finishes in the second and third rounds where she scores 92 points, right? Something like that. If Blanchfield goes out and wins 50-45 with 7 or 8 takedowns, she'll probably score 130 points, right? So the upside is there. But look at all the other fighters we have on this card. Arce could score 100+ points. Loughran, Silva, Ruzaboev, right? Malkoun has takedown upside, obviously. Algeo, questionable, right? He'll be lower owned. Emmers, Emmers theoretically has takedown upside. There's a lot of wrestlers on this card, or people that at least wrestle more often than not. Like guys like Arce and Silva, and to some extent, I guess Nursultan and Ruzaboev. Uh, but mostly Arce and Silva. These are the knockout guys. Their path, like at 9,500 and 9,300. I mean, obviously they're facing Chris Weidman and Herbert Burns, who are much more likely to get knocked out in the first round. Uh, to me, in this range, I think Loughran and Ruzaboev are going to be more popular than Arce and Silva, but I don't know by how much. I prefer to play Loughran and Ruzaboev only because they pretty much have two ways to win, either with wrestling or with a quick knockout. Arce and Silva, I don't know, 9,500, 9,300. If they don't get that knockout in the first round, it's going to be very tough for them. Really tough for them to be optimal. Then we have Malkoun here, who we've seen chains takedowns together. Doesn't have much submission upside. He really is more of a take you down and hold you down type of fighter. But he's facing Petrosky at 7,200, who's also a wrestler, right? Also better on his feet. Problem with Petrosky, probably not much of a gas tank, right? So Petrosky could actually look very good in this fight for the first round, and then by the third round be dead. Or if his gas tank holds up, this line shouldn't have been as wide as it should. So like for the underdogs that I currently am targeting, and we'll talk more about this tomorrow. Like I said, this is more of a DFS strategy recap of what you should be looking at for the slate. I want to hear Liam's fight breakdowns. I want to hear Mike's thoughts. I want to see our sim output. So this is more of a first look in general. But the underdogs that I'd be targeting as of now would be Petrosky at 7,200, Reese McGee at 7,600, Connor Matthews, who may have line value against Bazooka, right? Bazooka, I think it's Bazooka. Connor Matthews at 7,800, Anton Turkali at 7,900. And then on the upper end, I mentioned Loughran and Ruzaboev, but they're obviously going to be popular. Same for Chidi Njokuani and Ibo Aslan. I'll have plenty of them. But outside of that, I'd be looking. I mean, a lot of like Luque at 8,200. I mean, like this Luque Buckley fight is interesting. I don't think this goes to scorecards, but this fight is close enough that if someone wins in the second or third round, are they going to score enough points? This is going to be the type of fight where Buckley looks great in the first round, and then Luque finishes him in the second round. But Luque didn't score enough points in the first round that his second round finish gets you 78 points, right? It feels like that type of fight. I think the Gatto Dudakova fight, I think there's a lot more variance than our projections make it out to be. Both these girls have no problem wrestling. Gatto's, I think, a little bit better on her feet, but I wouldn't be surprised if this fight ended in a submission finish by either side. And the thing about Gatto is that she has a propensity to pull guard. Like she doesn't mind playing off her back. And that's a very good thing for DFS purposes for her opponent. So I think Dudakova is actually going to be quite low owned on this slate. But if the fight goes that way, where, Dudakova is on top for 3 rounds and Gatto can't find a finish from the bottom, all that control time, the multiple takedowns, Dudakova, even at plus 500, I think there's some value there. If the fight goes that way. If the fight doesn't go that way, it's going to be very hard for her to score well at 7,700. And then we got, can you take shots on like a returning Chris Weidman? I guess. I mean, I think he's a shell of himself, but I mean, 34% chance of winning, and he's 6,900. What is his win condition against Bruno Silva? I guess I could knock out. Can he knock out Bruno Silva? Leg kick knockout or something, maybe? I don't know. Cedric Dumas against Ruzaboev. I think that's a very high variance fight. We haven't seen much of Ruzaboev. His strength of schedule before the UFC is suspect. And the first fight we saw him in, he knocked him out in like 30 seconds or something. So who knows how much of a gas tank this guy has. Now, obviously, Cedric Dumas comes from that like street fighting background, so he's not all that technical and not all that good, but he can be dangerous. So I don't mind, even if Ruzaboev is going to be very popular, taking a shot at Cedric Dumas, but most of the time, that doesn't end very well. So that's, I guess, as long as I could go with my voice. I got a little bit better. I mean, I talked for 20 minutes straight or so and not had to, not had to cough, right? I'm still getting over. Seems like I've had a cold for 3 weeks, the flu, and it comes back, and then it comes, whatever. So yeah. So this is first look thoughts on the UFC Atlantic City card, which is tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern. We're going to do crunch time at 4:30 tomorrow Eastern with Mike H3 Buddha. Check out the Ground and Pound podcast for premium members. You can always join us in the Discord. RotoGrinders.com/Discord. The MMA channel, I believe, is free. Yeah, too many free channels in the Discord. I don't know. If you haven't joined already, join now. Hit that thumbs up button on your way out the door. Yeah, the more thumbs up I get, the more that my voice comes back. So smash that like button. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell to always know when I go live. We got tons of content coming out today for MLB, for NBA, for MMA, we got soccer tomorrow also, right? We got tons of stuff here. So join us here at RotoGrinders. I'll be back on Monday to talk about all things you're thinking about. The daily fantasy props and pick 'em on RotoGrinders today.